Is your business protected against the threat of malicious litigation and frivolous lawsuits? Are you sinking company profits into marketing campaigns that do nothing to contribute to the growth of your business? Bottled Business Sense provides practical business perspectives that uniquely emphasize both legal and media marketing strategies to protect and ensure the longevity of your business. Now, whether you're trying to provide a startup business with some level of stability or an established business with foolproof asset and estate protection, or simply attempting to get a better return for your business marketing dollars, Bill Bernard and Rick Moscoso will expose potential pitfalls to ensure the security and growth of your business, free from unwanted expense and the threat of litigation. You'll learn how to implement marketing and protection tools equal to those used by today's most successful corporations. Let's join Bill and Rick for today's Bottled Business Sense show.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm one of your co-hosts of the Bottled Business Sense show, Bill Bernard, and I'm here with my co-host, Rick Moscoso. And, of course, we're here every Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. to bring you some business tips and marketing tips and legal tips and the whole array of stuff that you need to run your business on a daily basis to make it grow and prosper and to protect it. And that's what the show's all about. We're on, as I said, every week. We really enjoy doing this, and we're glad you're joining us. And, we try to spread these topics around to try to talk about general business principles. And sometimes we're a little more specific on legal issues. Sometimes we're a little more specific on marketing issues. But today we're going to try to blend some marketing with general business principles by talking about a subject matter that are near and dear to a lot of people's hearts, and you'll see what I mean in a minute. But before I do that, let me introduce my co-host Rick Moscoso on the other end. How you doing this morning, Rick?
Hey, good morning, Bill. I'm doing great. Another Tuesday morning here, sharing with the audience. So always looking forward to that. And beautiful day here in Southern California.
That it is. Before we get started, Rick, why don't you tell everybody, because I know you've got this pretty down pat, tell everybody where they can get a hold of the Bottle Business Show and where we're located and on what media sites and stuff like that.
Yeah, we're on our simulcast site is bottlebusinesssenseshow.com. We're all over social media, so you can always look up Bottle Business Sense Show on Facebook, Twitter, Google Plus. All of those platforms. Actually, on Twitter, we're BBS Show. So we're all over that. We broadcast on simulcast, as we said, on the main website. And then for all you audio files out there, we're also broadcasting on Blog Talk Radio at blogtalkradio.com/Bottled Business Sense Show. So you can reach us on any of those platforms, listen to previous episodes by category. And then if you're also interested in feeding us some topics to talk about in future shows or even want to be a guest, drop us a line at bottledbusinesssenseshow@gmail.com. And we'd certainly appreciate the feedback or participation if you're interested in doing that. So
absolutely. Well, today, with the recent death of Muhammad Ali, we decided that we were going to bring to light some things about him that would adapt to the businesses of the people that listen to the show. And the reason being is that most people, I guess, know, but maybe not everybody, that this guy was a marketing genius, not just a boxer, not just a civil rights leader. He really knew what he was doing. And in our travels, Rick and I have really looked at some stuff that we think could be apropos to the everyday business of the young or old entrepreneur. And we thought we'd take up some of those things and talk about them because when you really slice and dice them, they turn out to be very, very important. Right, Rick?
Yeah, absolutely. You take a look at what he's done in the past, and some people see him as a kind of a bigger than life individual, someone who is a little braggadocious, maybe that's the word. But, when you look at what he did and how that applies to the way he marketed himself, it really is genius. He foresaw a lot of things that to the average person at the time, even today, you may think that that's a pretty ridiculous claim. That's a claim that's way out there. You don't deserve to say something like that. And while it did turn off his opposition and some fans who didn't necessarily like him, he did follow through and brought a lot of those statements to fruition. And so, if we take a look back at some of his marketing strategies, if you want to call it that, based on some of his claims, some of his quotes, I think it's important for us to share and kind of categorize those things into some bullets here and see how we can apply these same practices into our business. So with that,
I think that's a great idea. I mean, that's a great idea. In fact, we'll even give you a couple of quotes to add in a little humor today that Muhammad used to say every now and then. It certainly frustrated his opponents. That's for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, he was a genius. He practiced what he preached. And the first quote that really caught my attention, and I know you and I, Bill, both practiced this, but Muhammad once said, I hated every minute of training, but I said, don't quit. Suffer now and live the rest of your life as a champion. People don't think about making a statement like that. You look at some of the most successful business owners out there and you ask them, what is it that keeps you going? What, when you wake up in the morning, how do you start your day? And how do you profess your success on a consistent basis so you stay on track, so you're consistent? So when I listen to a quote like that, Bill, and I talk to business owners about it, they don't look that far ahead. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, there's two things that come to mind. Number one, that you're going to make mistakes. And of course, the important thing is to learn from your mistakes as you move through the course of your business practice. But the other thing is, I think about somebody who does a list, who puts a list up on their board, bulletin board, or on their desk, or whatever it is every day that says, I'm going to get 5 or 6 or 7 or whatever it is things done every day. And I'm going to cross these off my list, and some of it's going to be difficult, and some of it may frustrate me along the way, but I'm going to adhere to it, and I'm going to push through. And here's a little example on a sticky back on June the 8th. This is the one that I have most handy, but this is a little list I comprised, and it's and as I go across it, I'll cross out what I've done and what I want to accomplish that day. And that's the way you get through these tough times. That's the way you persevere. And I think that if people don't have that plan or some sort of a plan implemented that makes them responsible to themselves, then at the end of the day and at the end of the month, the end of the year, when they go to look at their profits, they're not going to be a champion. So you put in the time, and it's going to cause you some frustration along the way. But basically, you're in training, just like Muhammad was referring to, right? You're in training. You're building this business so you can get it to the point you want it to be at. And of course, with that, it goes without saying that you're going to have some goals written down as well.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you really need a process that you practice on a daily basis. And, if that process isn't quite working, don't change the goal. If you have a goal in mind, change the process to adjust and make micro adjustments as you go on, but certainly keep that same goal in mind, because that probably won't change as much as the process.
And one of the things that Muhammad talked about is believing in yourself, and that goes along with what we just said. I mean, the classic example that I found was where he was before he fought Sonny Liston in 1964. He drove a bus to Sonny Liston's house at 3 a.m. in the morning, and on the side of the bus it said, "Liston must go in 8." And he was screaming out the side of the bus, "Come on out of here! I'm going to whip you now!" and so forth and so on. He was really geared up on the day of the fight, and sure enough, he knocked Liston out in the 8th round, believe it or not. So, he really believed in what he could accomplish, and I know it may sound like something that's taken for granted, but really, when you think about it, as a business owner, you have to believe in yourself, because when you hit the wall, if you can go in two directions. You can say, okay, I'm going to learn from this mistake. I'm going to continue to believe in myself. I'm going to persevere. I'm going to become that champion, or I'm going to give up, or I'm going to complain, or I'm going to bitch and moan to somebody because things are just not going my way.
Yeah, I mean, he one of his quotes here, he said, "He who is not courageous enough to take risk will accomplish nothing in life." And he certainly, by taking that bus trip at 3:00 in the morning to Liston's house, certainly put himself out there to make sure he followed through with what he said he was going to do. Right?
He had a clear vision in his practice of boxing. He knew what he wanted to accomplish, and he implemented it by setting forth goals and by making sure he adhered to a schedule that was going to pay off at the end. And he never compromised his principles. I know somebody once said that was what a friend of mine said. That's what makes him admire Ali the most, because he had enormous respect for the courage and integrity that was required to run his business, and his business was the business of boxing. So a good example might be, well, if somebody is going to try to gouge you down on the price of your service or your product, are you going to take that business because you want the business so badly, or are you going to stick up for your principles and make sure that they understand, or attempt to make them understand, the value that they're getting? Because that's what it's all about. Are they getting something? Are they getting value for their money, or do they just want something that's going to be inexpensive? Because if that's the case, they're not really interested in the true nature of your product or service. They just want something for the cheapest price possible. And if that's the case, just go online and you can probably find whatever it is you want without using a professional marketing person or a legal person or an accounting person or whatever it is you might be interested in.
Yeah, I mean, that goes without saying. He had strong principles, and it's very evident throughout history what he did. When he went from Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali, he said, "I know where I'm going. I know the truth. I don't have to be what you want me to be. I'm free to be what I want to be." And so he certainly followed through with that, and never compromised any of his decisions, as bold as they were. And as controversial at the time as they were, he certainly followed through, stuck with it throughout his whole life. And
he was tenacious. He really was. And, the old story, I mean, he epitomized literally what we always say figuratively, right? The old story about it's not how much you get knocked down, it's how many times you get up, right? And so you're going to get knocked down in your business, and it really matters how many times you're going to get up. And with that comes another principle that Ali practiced all the time. Learn to laugh at yourself and understand that you need a sense of humor in any business that you are in. Because if you can't laugh at yourself and remain remain loose and lighthearted, boy, you're going to have an awful lot of difficulty, because 9 times out of 10, believe it or not, you're going to be mad at yourself for mistakes that you made. And forget about being mad at a client or being mad at a customer. You're going to be mad at yourself. And without a sense of humor and the right attitude, you're just really never going to make it. I mean, remember how he was tormented, and I use that word loosely, by Howard Cosell all the time, and they developed a great relationship in the end. But he displayed his intelligence with a sense of humor, his poetry, his anything that he said, he would really add some grace and style to it, and people found it funny. And when people find something funny, what 9 times out of 10 happens, Rick? They remember it, right? It's a sticking point.
Yeah.
So you may have a funny cliche or a funny saying in your business that you use as part of your logo or as part of your everyday advertising process. People are going to appreciate that. They know you're a lighthearted guy, that maybe you're not the kind of person that's going to be such a stickler for what he's doing that he or she can't deal with you and can't understand, especially when a problem arises. If you deal with it with a sense of humor, right, instead of being a hard ass, if you will, it's going to get you a lot more in the end, right? You get more with a carrot than with a stick.
Yeah, absolutely. I found myself several days ago just sitting here watching YouTube clips of many of his interviews, and I was, this was after he had retired and gone on and interviews like with Howard Cosell and with others. Just one of the things that struck me is actually how funny he was, and how he could make light of himself, even though he was, he came along very confident, very poised. He had a great sense of humor, but most of all, what I learned from that is that he was extremely, extremely humble. I mean, don't you think?
Yeah, he was, and that of course, that played hand in hand, I think, with his spirituality. He realized that his main goal, speaking on his behalf from what he said, his main goal was he wanted to get to heaven. He would do anything he could to get there, and he realized that you can't talk down to people other than in the sense of humor that he displayed by way of some of his marketing stuff. But I mean, in the end, at the end of the day, he was a very humble guy and realized that boxing wasn't the most important thing. Winning wasn't the most important thing. But at the end of the day, being humble and respectful, sticking to your principles and adhering to them on a daily basis was something that someone would really appreciate. I've said this, if I said it once, I've said it a million times. I really believe people need to be humble in whatever business they're in. Now, attorneys are famous for having these huge egos. And I have to say that during my 30 years of practice, every day I went to court or dealt with another attorney or another client, I always tried to be very humble and respectful to the other lawyer, to keep it on a very professional level, not become my client, but rather represent my client. And I think Ali represented the art of boxing in just that way. At the end of the day, he knew what the most important thing was for him, and that was his spirituality and his religion. So, those are things that come from the heart, that aren't necessarily something that's taught. You would hope in a family situation it is, but whether it is or it isn't, the information's out there for you to be able to grasp and hold on to. And I think anybody who doesn't understand that is really missing out, because once you are humble, by serving a purpose, whatever that purpose may be, that's higher than yourself, you're going to be rewarded in ways you can't imagine.
Oh, I saw a clip the other night as I was perusing some of the interviews that he did, and it was either in the late 80s or early 90s when the Arsenio Hall was still on, right? So he had Muhammad Ali on a show. It was just him and Arsenio, and Muhammad was in a tuxedo. And so they're just ending the interview, and he says, hold on a second. I want to bring out a couple of friends. And he brings out Sugar Ray Leonard and Mike Tyson. And Mike, this is during the day when he was, he was just unbeatable. He was a machine. And so they all sat down, paid their respects, to Muhammad. And then they bantered a little bit, and then they asked Muhammad, in your prime, do you think you could take this guy? And he was pointing to Mike Tyson. And, Mike in his younger years like that, he was a little bit on the humble side, even though he was a bull. He graciously deferred to Mike and said, yeah, there's there's no way. I mean, he was a much more powerful boxer than Muhammad said he was, and he didn't take on that early day persona where he would profess that he was unbeatable. It was a very humbling situation. He paid his respects to the current champ for the skill that he showed in his early fights, and it professed to him that, hey, this guy's going to be a great fighter. He's going to do some great things for the sport of boxing. But I just thought, the interplay between the three champs that were up there on the stage was really showed his heart, so to speak, and what kind of a man he really was.
Well, you take those two principles we just talked about, humble and sense of humor. Think about those two things, because I think, other than setting goals for your business, why I think those two are the most critical is very simple. When you're humble and when you have a sense of humor, what's the end result? The end result is people do business with people that they like, right? Think of somebody as in your travels in your business that you do business with or that you meet in business. Don't you remember them? Don't you develop a liking to them if they've got a sense of humor? Don't you like them? Don't you want to get to know more about them if they're humble, if they come off as a quote unquote nice guy or nice gal, unquote, as opposed to somebody who's going to shove a card in your face and start telling you everything they do and how good they are at doing it, right?
Yeah.
That can be projected in your marketing. That can be projected on your, on your website, in your logo. If you've got somebody working for you who knows what they're doing, and you decide you're going to adapt those personality traits, then bingo. I think that's 90% of the battle right there, because you combine humility, humor, and a good working knowledge of your profession. I truly don't see with those three things how you could possibly be unsuccessful.
Yeah,
I really mean that.
So I have one comment to that, and it's more of a pet peeve. And you and I both do networking. We do face-to-face networking with different groups, and I find that taking that sense of humor, humble approach is by far the best way to go, especially when you're meeting a stranger. So imagine yourself at a networking event and somebody approaches you, and the first thing they do, even before they try and get to know you, is they shove a card in your face, right? And it's instant. For me, I instantly turn off because
it's a turn off. I've had that happen. I agree with you 150%. It's a turn off right away.
Oh, it's a turn off. It's now you stand there and you wait for the sales pitch, right? Rather than trying to get to know the person, learning about their character and how you can maybe help serve them in their business. It's not an approach that you should take out there. And if you use these principles that we talked about, that Muhammad was so good in doing, you're right. Nothing but success can come to your business or to the way you do business with others. Because
life moves in steps, right? You get to know somebody, you like somebody, you want to do business with somebody, right? I mean, you just don't pick up a phone and call a plumber and say, hey, I want you to come over and repair my toilet or whatever the problem may be. You're going to maybe ask for references, see what people think about this person. You're going to want this person to come over and maybe give you a quote. I typically start chatting with the person. I want to find out a little bit more about the person. I might even do some investigation, as I said, before I even have them come over. In a networking setting, you're going to want to speak to somebody. You're going to want to find out a little more about them. Hey, what's going on with their family, maybe, or how long they've been in the neighborhood. And once you start finding those things out, you gauge their personality by the responses they provide. If they're humble, they have a sense of humor. If they're genuine, you're going to want to know more about that business when it comes time for you to want to use that service or product. Mm-hmm. And if you just come up to somebody and you hand them a card, or you start talking about what a great lawyer you are, or what a great videographer you are, how many people you've serviced in the past, and that's fine. That will be picked up on naturally once the person likes you. That stuff will come out in the way that it's supposed to come out, in sequence, if you approach it in the right way. And that's what and we talk about Ali a lot here on the show today, obviously, and people might say, well, that seems to fly in the face of Ali because he was really in your face when he was marketing. But remember, when he was in your face, he knew what the impression was that he was making. It was all comical genius. Every single poem, from fly like a butterfly, sting like a bee, to what was the great quote that he used during the before the Liston fight? I think he said something like, people are going to come to the fight and they're going to see a flying satellite. People didn't know when they paid their money they were going to see a total eclipse of the sunny, right? So I mean,
that's right.
he made it, he made you like him and root for him as a boxer simply by his persona. And I think that's what we're trying to get across here, even though that shows you can be an in-your-face kind of a guy to some extent if you approach it with humor. And then you let people see the inner you by way of the interviews that he did and how spiritual he was. Then, of course, everything falls into place. Now, with the boxer, it's a little bit different than working up from a business from the bottom from the very bottom up to the top of your profession or service. But still, the principles are the same. You have to be able to incorporate these things into your business because these are the things that are unseen. Right? These are the things that you have to decide for yourself before you move forward. And I would say to somebody, put that as something you put in your business plan. When you start to put down your business plan as to how you're going to approach a business before you start it, for example, you better have highlighted humility and humor as something you're going to incorporate along the way, because while that may not be finances or product quality or quantity that you're going to have to be able to put down as needing and accounting for, you're going to have to be able to account for your personality as well, because without that personality, all of those other figures that you put down aren't going to mean a thing. Yeah,
that's right. Well, I hope our audience has learned a lot from this episode. We wanted to really, teach some principles here from a legend, and many of us didn't know he was doing it at the time, but now we can look back and say, geez, he was a genius when he did what he did and what he said he was going to do, and and in the ways that he followed through, and he made light of the situation, but he also came through with his bold claim. So,
and the other thing I wanted to mention real quick, Rick, is, we talked about at the top of the show, setting goals and how you do that. But, the thing about Ali was he challenged himself. He pushed the envelope. He understood it was necessary to do that. And he had a vision for what he wanted to accomplish. So he knew the truth about what he wanted to accomplish. He didn't have to wait and say, okay, what do other people want me to do? How are other business people doing this? It's fine to learn business principles from other people, but make sure you know what you want to do. And if you're challenged, accept the challenge, and move forward, and make success happen. I think that's important to remember as well. And again, I'm in agreement with you, Rick. I hope we have been able to talk a little bit about some of the esoteric business principles that you need to incorporate into your business, and at the same time honor a great champion and a legend.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. I certainly learned a lot as we look back on the life of Muhammad Ali, and pay our respects to his legacy and what he brought to the world and what he believed in, and how we can use some of his everyday practices in our business to be more successful. So with that, Bill, great discussion today. If you would like to reach out and send us some feedback, or would like to hear a topic on the show, or any communication, go ahead and send it to bottledbusinesssenseshow@gmail.com, or just reach out to us at our contact information below this video, and we'll be happy to answer you back and answer any questions that you might have.
Absolutely. So until next week, we'll look forward to seeing you next week on another show. And remember to keep going with a stiff upper lip, with a great attitude, with humility and with humor, and continue to have a great week and be prosperous. And we'll see you again next week.
All right. Take care, everyone. See you next week.